Cross-continent.
Yeah,
I said
cross-continent.
cross-continent.
I
Yeah.
thought it was cross-content.
Thanks for joining us on Toby Talks, presented by MaxCare, your number one pet podcast on the net.
Hi, I'm so sorry. The network
No
just got
worries.
off.
Learn about common pet behavior from the experts.
You have to send me a picture of this dog.
Tips, tricks, and more as we interview experts and get their professional opinions.
Well, I think we lost you there
I
for a minute.
think we are lagging somewhere.
Perhaps.
Welcome to the second ever episode of Toby Talks. I'm Owen, your host, and I'm here with my puppy, Toby, the star of the show. Today we speak with avian surgeon and orthopedic expert, Dr. Ushma Patel, about her groundbreaking work and incredible experiences she's seen while working in the field in India. Joining us on the call is Michael Lilly, MaxCare co-founder, excited to guide us through this conversation. If you like this content, be sure to subscribe for our weekly updates. And now for what you've been waiting for.
Okay, well, welcome to Talks with Toby, everyone. This is our second episode, and today we have Dr. Ushma Patel on the line. Dr. Ushma Patel is an industry-leading avian veterinarian with more than a half-decade of experience. She received her training at Nagpur Veterinary College and is known for being amongst the few wild avian orthopedic surgeons, as well as making the first scientifically customized prosthetic leg for birds in India. Dr. Ushma, how are you doing today?
Hi, Owen. Thank you so much for such a kind introduction. And I'm doing very well. I hope everything is fine at your end as well.
Everything's doing great here. As you guys can tell as you're listening in, we're doing a nice cross-content podcast today, which is really interesting to record on our end, but kind of fun, and we hope you guys can enjoy all the information. Along with me on the line, we've got Michael. And Michael, how about you give yourself a quick little introduction?
Okay, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here with you, Owen, today, and Dr. Ushma as well. My name is Michael Lilly. I'm one of the co-founders of MaxCare Pets, and very excited to be part of this discussion, learning from Dr. Ushma today. Dr. Ushma, how is being a veterinary surgeon unique in India as opposed to somewhere else in the world?
Okay, wow, that's a great question, Michael, because veterinary surgeons all around the world basically work with an array of animals and birds. To give you a gist, in birds, we have sizes of like we treat the smallest of the sparrows and the biggest of the vultures. Whereas in animals, we have to treat dogs, cats, cows, horses, reptiles, and whatnot. So, all these different species and breeds and different genre in the animal kingdom is all which is to be seen by a veterinarian, of course. But in places abroad, we have specialization such as exotic medicine, we have small animal medicine and surgery, we have large animal, we have equine. In India, we have all of these things, but when you go in the field or when you are practically in the field, you cannot say, oh, I am a wildlife vet and I'm only going to see wildlife cases. Whereas if there is an animal which is hurt, which requires medical attention, which is a farm animal, we are bound with our duty to see it. So the other thing that is very unique to be a veterinary surgeon in India is that we have so many animals that require help, that from a very early stage in our clinical practice, we have hands-on of an OPD of about more than 150 to 200 animals per day. And this involves dogs and big animals and reptiles and wildlife and whatnot. So the amount of clinical practice that we do here per day is huge, and the number of vets since it's still a budding field and it's still in infancy, we have the number of vets to animal ratio is quite low. So
Mhm.
one vet has an opportunity to treat more than 20 to 30 animals per day, and this is in a span of 3 to 4 hours of the hospital time. So it's quite a busy day in a veterinary surgeon's life, and we operate more than 7 to 8 cases per day,
Mm.
and apart from the OPD, and it's almost like a 24/7 job that you're hands on. The young vets are also very uh, available all the time, and they are always hands on. They are giving IVs, and they
Mm.
are assisting the surgeons. They are giving injectables as per the protocols. Everything is just going on. So there's a lot of hands on practice. So the practical experience in India is way more than what one would achieve in other countries, because of the stray and the
Yeah.
population of animals that we've got in the country.
Wow. That's wild. Seems like you guys must be pretty nonstop there. Jeez.
So, Dr. Ushma, it sounds like with the vast array of species in India and the amount of operational or medical surgeries that one would have access to as a veterinary student, it seems like that diversity lends itself perhaps to an Indian veterinarian being very well rounded. It is that
Yes,
something that makes
yes,
sense?
I agree. I agree. It does make sense, and it's very um, theoretical knowledge is extremely important, no
Hmm.
doubt. But the amount of practice that we get, the amount of cases that we see, the amount of things that we see which are not in the book are way higher, and we get to see, basically experience and help so many animals, that
Mhm.
practically we are more well rounded, and this in the end gives us a confidence.
Mm.
Basically it gives us a confidence to face any challenge, any situation, any case, and we, whatever is thrown at us, we make sure that we do it at the best possible of our ability. Another side to it is, Indians in general are a little more emotional and a little more attached to, I feel, to a lot of animals because of their religious values, or whatever they, their devotion towards animals, etc. So
Mhm.
this makes them not put down a lot of animals.
Mm.
Oh,
Sometimes
okay.
it gives us a chance to help them,
Yeah.
without wondering or thinking of the cost, because the cost of veterinary care is not as high as it would be somewhere else. So
Mhm.
just an example that I would cite is, I have a dog called Ruby. She's 6.5 years old, and she's a Rottweiler. And she was in the veterinary hospital with parvoviral infection, and she was only puking blood and pooping blood, etc.
Oh
And
no.
if there would have been any other vet for a second opinion, they said that she is not the correct candidate to survive.
Yeah.
Oh.
But since we have this inbuilt thing of, let's at least give it a try, why not just give it a try? And we put in 18 hours per day in her IV fluids, her medication, constantly being with her one person, 24/7 in her care. And after 18 days, she finally was at a stage where we could feel that, okay, she may actually survive after
Wow.
18 days. And she had a strong willpower. She did survive, and finally I ended up adopting her because she adopted me.
Oh,
Oh
that's
And
very
my God.
sweet.
Well, at the end of
and
this, you need to you have to send me a picture of this dog. That's
Yes,
I
we would
absolutely
amazing.
will.
love to see more of Ruby. And at what point in Ruby's life, Dr. Ushma, was the surgery held?
um she was um, she was not under a surgery in the beginning. She
I
was
see.
under medical treatment
Medical treatment.
for the gastritis, and eventually we did spay her because I didn't
Mhm.
want her to bear puppies
Yeah,
and then become weak, and then she would be too emotionally attached to give them away. So we treat her just as a family, as another human in a house.
of course.
So
Just like my
yes.
puppy.
Very sweet. Very
Agreed.
sweet.
So, what, Dr. Ushma, would the difference between, say, an avian surgeon's day to day or general task versus a regular veterinary surgeon? Is there a high difference? I know being so well rounded in India, there may not be too much of a difference, but even for some of our listeners in the western part of the world, there may actually be a high difference. Would you be able to describe that a little bit for us?
Sure. So a normal veterinary surgeon, which also I am, I do deal with cases of small animals and large animals.
Yeah.
But the difference to when it comes to avian patients is one thing: most of them are wild birds.
Okay.
The amount of people who have exotic birds is on a rising trend.
Mm.
The idea of keeping a pet bird in the house is on a rising trend, but it still is not at a peak where every other house you'll find an exotic bird or an exotic animal.
Hmm.
You will still find more of dogs and cats. So the patients that I get, the exotic ones, yes, they are tame. We can handle them. The owner is there to tell us what is happening in the day-to-day routine. They are there to let us know what difference they find in the bird, or what is the issue in the appetite, etc. So we have a good amount of history in exotic birds, but
Yeah.
my specialization comes in wild avians, and that is one. And then the orthopedic part, I'll get back to it later.
Yeah.
But
All
the
right.
wild birds that I get are from the rescues done by people and forest department. Most of these are pro bono cases because there is no particular owner to look after them.
Yes, of
The
course.
bird is found and is brought to the clinic or the hospital, and they have no other history to it. Now we get herbivorous birds, we get carnivorous, we get insectivorous birds. So identification of these species is very important. The place that I stay in has only in the radius of about 10 kilometers more than 250 species of birds
Wow.
Wow.
that are around me. So I have to make sure that I identify the bird correctly, so I know the diet, I know the behavior, I know other things. These wild birds have a special trait, that is they have something called as a phenomena where they will hide their illness to
Mm.
survive in the wild as long as possible. And
Yeah.
when they are actually held by a human, or they are I mean people are able to rescue it, that means that it is at its lowest. So when I get a bird, I know it is critical, and the mortality rate for things like this is very high, and it is heartbreaking. But then we go all in, we take the temperature, we make sure that they are not hypothermic or hyperthermic, that is low in temperature. Usually that is what the patients come in with. They are
Hmm.
hypoglycemic because they probably are unable to hunt or find food because of an injury or illness, and we have to push them with fluids and other multivitamins.
Mhm.
Then we stabilize them with oxygen. And the worst part being, they do get cardiac attacks, that is cardiac myopathy. That is when they are so stressed because of the handling that they collapse. So I
Wow.
don't just have to be in the clinic and treat the patient, but I have to make sure the people who rescue, the forest department, are well trained in understanding the rescue, correct ethical rescue methods, by which the bird is not um, under so much of stress. We use towels and boxes and closed cages where only ventilation part is open, but there is no light going through. They are not able to see what is happening. They are not able to perceive that they are being caught or captured, and
Mm-hmm.
the transportation time has to be a bare minimum from the place where they go and rescue to coming to my clinic. So there are a lot of things that undergo a rescue before it comes to the clinic, which helps me in making sure that the bird can be treated well and has a better chance of survival.
Yeah.
Once we get it at the clinic, we stabilize it, and then I do the radiographs or the blood work or whatever it is to find out whether the bird is uh, having any issues, injuries, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So most of these wild birds come with orthopedic injuries or minor injuries, but mainly orthopedic, where they are hit by some vehicle or they are entangled in some strings, or they are basically undergoing any sort of trauma.
Absolutely.
And once we see them, we give them the pre-meds. We don't really give them too much time to be in pain, and painkillers are given, and we immediately start off with whatever the planned procedure is,
Mm-hmm.
rather it be pinning or just giving an external fixator or just giving a soft bandage with a splint. So all these things, according to, and of course it also depends a lot on what kind of bird it is. If they are raptors like owls and a kite, and other birds, they have very sharp claws, so we
Yeah.
have to use bandages which will not go in the claws and get entangled. Whereas if I get some parakeets, or any other cetacean family bird, I have to make sure they have an e-collar on so they don't damage the bandages by their beak. So the treatment protocol is so unique for every single patient that it's a different entity altogether to be an avian orthopedic surgeon
Yeah.
than a small animal, because post operatively, at the end of the day, I am the only one who will be going and seeing them, and it's only my team who will be going and taking care of them. They don't have a home that they will be going back to till they are fine, and then we release them back to the wild.
Wow.
So yeah, a lot of challenges that we
Yeah,
have to overcome.
that faces definitely a lot more challenges there. Wow, that's a
Very sounds very very complicated, Dr. Ushma.
It
How
does.
big is your team with respect to the wild animals, or how big is your team in
um
general?
in general, we don't have a very big team. I have a team of we are a team of three surgeons, and we have three junior vets. But we those three junior vets are usually in rotation. So I have
Mm.
six of them. Two of them are, as in one team is on leave when one team is at work with us.
yeah,
So we are a close, tight knit family over
very
here,
hardworking.
and each one of them is equally dedicated and equally driven to make sure that the best possible outcome is done.
But seems you guys really kind of fall into our brand slogan of "Pets Are Family," which we really try to push.
Absolutely. Yes.
Dr. Ushma, in your world of avian veterinary medicine, is there an experience that you'd like to share with us today?
So, when you ask me such a question, it takes me back to so many of beautiful cases that I would like to share.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, I'm going to stick to just one or two of those beautiful experiences. Um, one, I would like to give a background that in India, every January, in the middle of the month in India, we have a festival called as Makar Sankranti, which is the festival of kites, flying kites, basically paper kites. And the strings that are used to fly these kites are typically coated with fine powdered glass. It's called a manja. Now this thread which is coated with glass is very sharp, because in the festival people have competitions to fly kites and make sure that their kite cuts the kite of the opposite team, the thread of the opposite team, and it's the last one flying. But in that bid of keep making sure that the thread is very fine and it's very sharp, the birds which are flying in the sky cannot see or perceive in motion such a fine thread, and they uh, uh, they wouldn't know something like that has come in their territory, and they would just fly through it. um, Unfortunately, the thread does cut and cause a lot of injuries. And if you may believe me, every week of that month we get more than 1,000 cases per day of injured birds,
Mm.
after which may almost 30% die on the spot because of the bleeding. And other birds come with wing fractures, leg fractures, lacerations on the wings, legs, chest muscle on their they are decapitated, most of them. Some are entangled and just hanging by the thread, and some are straight away amputees that come into me for treatment. And it's quite a scene, it's quite a massacre. We are trying to spread awareness for the same, but it is going to take a long time for the practices to change and sensitize the people about the ill effects of flying these kites. um, so one of those experiences is that every year during November to March, around March, we get migratory birds from European countries, and they migrate to India for a warmer climate during those months.
Mhm.
Yep.
Now, Dalmatian pelicans are few of the world's biggest freshwater birds, and they have the largest wingspan in the world when it comes to freshwater birds. So these pelicans do migrate to India during this time. Now, I usually volunteer, and this is something that I do it because it just it just pains me to see so many birds be critically injured. And this Dalmatian pelican, which was found in Jaipur in Rajasthan, it had fallen on a roof after getting his wing cut, and our team of rescuers went there, got it safely with a first aid on field, and it came to the makeshift clinic that we have during that time just for birds in the city. And my God, it was a very bad scene. It was bleeding from places, and it just wouldn't stop. So we had to immediately anesthetize him, stabilize him with IV fluids, give it pain meds, and I had to start operating on the bird right away. So usually it's like a plastic surgery. We reconstruct the wing tendon by tendon, muscle by muscle, and make sure that the sutures are light enough so that the wing does not get heavy post operatively. At the same time, making sure that the sutures are strong enough so that the birds are able to fly for more about 20 to 30,000 feet. That is the height they will fly in, and that altitude is crazy in terms of wind knots and wind speed.
Mm.
So finally we did manage to operate it, stabilize it, shift it to our rescue center for birds. And post operatively it wouldn't eat food, so we had to go fishing and get fresh fish and various other food elements for the bird. And every day we would keep it on IV fluids, pain meds, change the bandage, give passive range of motion, that is a physiotherapy that we give while changing the bandages every day, so that they don't lose the muscle tone for as long as the wing is bandaged up. And uh, later on, what do you say, we make sure that they have enough flight practice or at different levels and different perches, so it can get a practice and hang off using the wing again. And after
Wow.
3 weeks of continuous physiotherapy, medication, everything, we finally managed to release it back in the wild. And the release video is just beautiful, it's breathtaking. I will
Mm.
share it with you
Oh,
Oh,
that's
soon.
please do.
Yeah, definitely share that with you, and then I'll make sure I also include that for all our viewers as a link into our blog if it's publicly available. So I make sure that everybody else can see that as well, because that sounds amazing.
Thank you. And another short experience that I would like to share is
Yes, please.
there was a black kite which was a victim of the same manja thread and got its leg amputated in the bid and while flying, and it was kept in a rescue center for quite some time. But because of only having weight bearing in one leg, it had started developing a disease called as bumblefoot, which is a very painful ulcerative pododermatitis, and it was unable to even stand on its remaining leg. At the end of the day, the vets there had decided that they were going to euthanize the bird. And like I said, we are all a big
Yeah.
we are all emotional fools here. And I asked them to give me a week. In that time, I connected with a few human prosthetists, and eventually, we were able to, with their help, of course,
Yeah.
were able to get the said materials and design a scientifically customized prosthetic leg for that bird, black kite, and we attached to it. It was also again working in two different states, because this bird was somewhere about 1200 kilometers from where I was working. So I had to take the measurements, come back to where I was working, make the leg, and then send it for fitting. And it fit
Wow.
just beautifully. It was just amazing, and he started bearing weight on the prosthesis, and the leg which had ulcerative pododermatitis could be given a rest, given the required medication, and it recovered well, and now it is still in captivity because of course the first leg that we made wasn't robotic or wasn't functional because of a lot of constraints,
Yeah.
technology and financial.
Mhm.
But it's in captivity and doing well instead of being euthanized.
That's
That is
amazing.
fantastic to hear. Let's get into the surgeon's mindset now. Dr. Ushma, can you please tell us, with respect to animal surgery, how do you channel all of your expertise and training into the task of performing surgery in the moment?
Wow. Okay. Um, so I've never really given this a thought because it becomes a natural process, I feel,
Mhm.
once you start practicing over and over the years. But when you ask me this question, I'm thinking um, it takes a lot of me to be calm, because everything around me is not calm. Everything around me in an emergency, the patient, the owner, the situation, everything is, it looks like it's out of control when things are, I mean, when animals are bleeding, birds are bleeding. And unless and until I am not calm, I don't think so I will be able to think further ahead on what next or what is the best step to take at that point.
Mhm.
So to start with, yes, being calm and in a good place is one way to make sure that everything is thought of before doing the surgery. Apart from that, um, I think the practice helps a lot in terms of gaining confidence. And when you are doing the same thing over and over again, I'm sure it just becomes a rhythm set in your head about what is to be done next. It becomes like a flow, a beautiful flow without any glitches in the work. So that is something which is very important, to be in touch, to be in practice, and to be there every time, be available. Apart from that, surgery, we usually, for emergencies, we are all hands on, everybody is ready, everybody is trained in the team. It's not just one person who is specialized, it's everybody. The two other surgeons that I work with are equally specialized in soft tissue and orthopedic surgeries. So we always know what is going to come next. Even though sometimes I am not operating and I'm just assisting, I already know what the surgeon requires next, and I'm ready with that instrument or the suture material or other things. So we have to be present and in the moment every time. We have to keep everything else away in the back of the head, and the priority is just the patient and just that situation at that point. So I think that's how we are able to perform even very critical surgeries with ease of what do you say, ease in the thing that we have
High
confidence that
pressure. Yeah.
everything will be okay in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like your team really is very, very in sync as well.
Yes.
All right, so I'm just gonna finish this off here with a quick last question. So, knowing that you're part of the Max Care team and helping us out here, can you explain to us what you think the benefits to pet owners, not even in North America but globally, the benefits to pet owners of virtual care or telehealth for pets would be?
Telehealth is quite a new concept, and it is not here to replace any of the traditional veterinary ways of physical examination and seeing the patient in person. It is here only to aid the veterinary examinations, I feel. This is mainly because right now we are in such unreal COVID situation that nobody had ever expected a pandemic to be upon us like this. But it is there and it is very real. To start with, the concept of going out has become such a foreign concept that it becomes difficult to choose between a pet's health by going to a veterinarian or our health if we are exposed to certain situations. So to bridge that gap, I think telehealth, I mean, nothing better than telehealth can be introduced. So, when an owner is in a situation where they are in a dilemma, whether it's emergency, it's an emergency, or it's something that can wait, or it's something that they can avoid uh, going in a wet place when it is the peak time, that is where we come in and we can say whether they should go or not. Second
Hmm.
thing, the amount of cases that we see here aid me greatly in diagnosing or giving a tentative diagnosis to the owner and guiding them through the situation. The owners have no idea what is happening to the animal. The animal is unable to speak, so the owner is in a very difficult point. So I try and give a counseling in a way that helps the owner to calm down. That
Hmm.
will help them help the animal more, and they will give me as much as information as they can. That is the key part, the information, the communication that we have between the patient and the doctor. That communication is the key to getting us the correct diagnosis, the correct help required to the pet animal at that point. Now, apart from this, like I said, we see so many animals every day that these cases have particular set of symptoms, particular set of behavior of the animal, and particular set of um, diagnosis that we can give upon based on the anamnesis or the history that we taken. So this helps us give them a proper diagnosis at the end of the day,
Yeah.
and the pet owner is at a place where they don't compromise the animal's health. At the same time, they are safe and they are not compromising their health either.
Mm-hmm.
So telehealth, I feel, is a great way of bridging this gap between going for a physical checkup at odd hours of the day, or at places where it's really not an emergency.
Yeah.
For an example, let me let me cite an example. There was an owner who kept thinking that their pet cat is in a lot of pain and has been mewing continuously, and was a lot of, basically in a place where the owner knew the cat was not comfortable. We asked them a few set of questions: the age, whether it was operated, what are the feeding habits, any change in food, etc., etc. After everything, we finally concluded the cat was merely in heat, and she was just wanting to mate with a male cat which was roaming
Wow.
outside their house. And they just saved about, I don't know how many dollars worth of emergency care in the middle of the night,
Wow.
just by making sure that they talk to us clearly that the cat is nowhere near in discomfort. It's just that she's in heat and she needs to be operated at the next
Yeah.
appointment with their vet.
Wow. That's wild.
So
Yeah, we definitely find a lot of people, it's the nature to just like kind of we don't know what's wrong, so we're gonna rush to the ER. Or we have to go see the doctor because something's wrong. And that's definitely really cool that the communication can definitely help bridge that
yes,
gap of knowing. And it's not a replacement. It's definitely there's no replacing like where Max Care can't do surgery on your dog, but it's definitely just that
correct.
knowing and that peace of mind of I don't do I have to do I not have to, and just having that care and peace of mind is
Yes,
key.
it helps both the owner as well as the animal.
Yeah,
And of course, where there are times where we feel it is an emergency, we will also tell you that okay, it is genuine emergency. We
yeah,
would want you to see go to your ER, or you take an appointment with your
yeah,
vet. But apart from that, the responses that I've been getting and the cases that we have been dealing with on Max Care have been fabulous, and most of them have been non-emergency cases, and we have been able to avoid the visits with a lot of home remedies and lot of things that the owner could ab- absolutely do it with ease and help their animal in ease almost immediately after talking to us. So that has been a great satisfaction that sitting at one continent and helping animals all over the world is just a beautiful opportunity that MaxCare Pet has given me, and I'm absolutely grateful for everything that MaxCare has been involved in with my professional expertise.
well, we are so grateful of you, and the fact that you just can't stop giving even across continents is absolutely astounding. So I think that's all of our questions. Michael, did you have anything last that you wanted to add in here?
I just wanted to say, Dr. Ushma, thank you so much for your time, first off. And I also want to say we look forward to mutually enjoying success with you. And once again, appreciate you being on the show so much. Your work is splendid, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Well, there you have it, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. It was a pleasure to bring you this content from Dr. Ushma Patel, avian expert and orthopedic surgeon. And if you liked this content, you can subscribe for more on this channel or find us on Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, Facebook, TikTok, and pretty much everywhere else on the web with the handle @MaxCarePet. And be sure to head over to www.maxcare.pet to learn about our 24/7 peace of mind that MaxCare can bring to your family. Again, that's www.maxcare.pet, and our handle is @MaxCarePet. We look forward to bringing you more information next week.